Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another Pioneer video, and today we're going to be talking about the most overrated cards in Pioneer, and I'll kind of get more into detail in just a moment here of kind of what that means for the most part, because I know there's kind of some different definitions of overrated, so we're going to go ahead and hop into that. But before we do, let me know at the end of the video, what do you think about the list? Is there cards that I should have included that I definitely did not, or, what would you change the order of the list if you do agree with the list? Just let me know in the comment section below. So okay, so overrated. So when I mean overrated, I don't mean that the card is necessarily bad, except for one example. I would say it's not that they're bad, it's the fact that I think they're just really overvalued in the format as a whole. A lot of people slot them into decks that can play them even though they're really not that good in those decks, that kind of thing. Yes, it's not, I'm not saying that these cards are bad and shouldn't see play. I'm just saying I think that there's either some potentially better alternatives, or you really shouldn't be playing it in the style of deck you are, or you're playing it too often, or overvaluing it, or it's just overrated. So let's go on and hop into here. Okay, so I have 10 cards on the list. Number 10 is Narset Parter of Veils. Not that Narset is bad, but one thing I've seen a lot with Narset Parter of Veils is how a lot of players enter Pioneer, maybe haven't played a lot of Pioneer, but they play a lot of like other formats. And they're playing a blue deck, so they automatically play Narset Parter of Veils in the deck. And to be honest, Narset is really only good in like the blue-white control decks, and they usually only play like 2, maybe 3 copies of Narset. Is Narset good? Yes. I'm not saying it's a bad card, but it's definitely overvalued. A lot of people play it, and it's not quite as good as you think, except like in those blue-white control shells, that kind of thing. It's not something you can just slide into any blue deck, obviously, because it also dies very easily for the most part. I mean, yeah, get in the 2, like top 4 cards, you can put something in your hand, like the 2 Search for Ascantus is solid, but I do think Narset is just a little bit overrated. So, number 9, I have Smuggler's Copter, which to some people might sound a little bit crazy, but really, so when Smuggler's Copter was unbanned, some people were concerned, oh my gosh, it's going to be really, really good. And, like I was kind of on the, the bandwagon of, hey, we can probably just unban it. It's probably not even super crazy. And to be honest with you, it's really not. It sees play in the Izzet in Soul deck. And then obviously like Rakdos Midrange plays like a couple copies of it. But, it's really, you could slot it into pretty much every aggro deck, but I've seen people try it in like some really bad mid-range decks, and it's like, yeah, you can do a thing with Smuggler's Copter in those decks, but largely it kind of takes like, I don't know, it's even in the decks with the most powerful cards, you're really only playing like 2 copies of Smuggler's Copter. It's not like you're jamming just a full 4 for the most part. So Smuggler's Copter is a very, very good card, but I do think it's just a little bit overrated. So number 8, I have Collected Company. So, and this might be a hot take with Collected Company. Again, not saying Collected Company is a bad card. It's definitely a strong card. But a lot of people think, like I've seen a lot of people prematurely scoop to Collected Company. They're maybe like a little bit behind, and then it's Collected Company, and boom, okay, I'm done, whatever, this game's over. And then little did you know, like you're gonna whiff. Like there's plenty of times where I've cast it and maybe hit like an elf, but my opponent was like conceding before it even resolved. So Collected Company is very, very good, but for those who don't play a lot of Collected Company, a lot of it's you live and die by it. If your Collected Companies are good, sure, you're going to win a lot of those games. But if your Collected Companies are bad, you are going to lose by a lot. I mean, that's how it is. You live and die by the Collected Company. So that's why I think the card is a tad bit overrated, still very strong in the format, but just be careful. Sometimes it can be quite the trap. All right, next card, number 7, I have Liliana of the Veil, which is a little bit surprising for me in terms of when I thought Liliana of the Veil was being reprinted into Pioneer, I thought this card was going to be like everywhere. And it kind of is, but even like the Rakdos midrange deck of the format, like which would be the perfect deck for Liliana, they're really playing like 1, maybe 2 copies of Liliana. They're not playing very many of them. A lot of people, they build like a black midrange deck and they automatically slot in 4 of them, which is generally not correct, which is kind of why also the card's like only like $10 a piece. But Liliana the Veil is still a very solid planeswalker, you know, but it's not the boogeyman that it once was. You know, obviously we've had a lot, even stronger 3-mana planeswalkers since Liliana the Veil has been printed. The card is good. You should still definitely play it in the format, but don't just jam 4 copies in your main board automatically. It's definitely not quite that strong and just a tad bit overrated. So, number 6, I have Brutal Cathar. So, Brutal Cathar, let's be honest, it's just a slightly better Banisher Priest. Like, obviously, it's 2 white instead of 1 white, and then it can transform, you know, and it's like a 3/3 with first strike and like ward, like discard a card, or pay 3 life is what it is. But at the end of the day, it's a 2/2. It dies to almost everything. It dies to, like, every burn spell, every, like, small creature that's attacking it or blocking or whatever. Brutal Cathar is pretty solid in the right deck, but, you know, humans decks, you know, for a minute there, they were just jamming 4 copies of Brutal Cathar, which was very, very incorrect, because Brutal Cathar had a lot of potential to just get blown out. Like, if that was, like, your one little bit of form of disruption, you pretty much just died. Obviously, now the decks are playing like Ossification and such like that, which is a lot stronger for the most part, and that's, you know, not even just in Pioneer, it's also standard as well. But Brutal Cathar, people just play 4 copies of it, and you want to know, against like blue-white control, it doesn't even do anything. It's a 2/2 for 3. There's nothing even for you to exile, really. So just keep that in mind with Brutal Cathar. It's a little bit overrated, still a solid card in its own right, but definitely don't just jam 4 copies of it. It's generally not the correct thing to do. All right, so we're getting into our top 5 here. So number 5, I have Ledger Shredder. So Ledger Shredder is a solid card in its own right, especially in the modern format. It's much, much better in modern than it is in Pioneer. Sees no standard play just because it's really not that good in that format. It's okay in this format, but I think a lot of people in like blue decks jam Ledger Shredder just because, you know, maybe they play modern or they've seen it in modern where it does some really strong things. And in this format, it's really only okay in the Is It Phoenix deck. Obviously, whenever a player casts their spell, second spell each turn, Ledger Shredder connives. It's an okay card, it really is. But sometimes there's some games with Is It Phoenix where you just play turn 2 Ledger Shredder, draw, you know, like a couple extra cards over a couple turns, and then you really can't even get anything going. Like, obviously the idea is you pitch your Arclight Phoenixes that you draw to it, which, I mean, if you do get the Phoenixes, you know, you're able to pitch them to the connive, it's really good. But then if you don't, it just, I don't know, it just kind of feels like a Merfolk looter with flying half the time. Ledger Shredder is a good card in its own right, but the problem is a lot of people, like most of these cards on this list, they just jam it in decks where it really doesn't belong for the most part, and then it doesn't do anything. So keep that in mind with Ledger Shredder. A strong card in its own right, but it is a little bit overrated in the format. So number 4, I have Tranquil Frillback, which I think a lot of people would be surprised to see on this list, but Tranquil Frillback is seeing a lot of Pioneer play right now. And whereas the card is not bad in its own right, especially I love dinosaurs, believe me. That's why I have a strong opinion on this card, is I think it's a little bit overplayed. Like, obviously the modes are not too bad on it, you know, they're all relevant, but like paying 4 mana for a 3/3 that, you know, destroys an artifact or enchantment, that's really not an incredibly good rate for the most part. You also have to pay the green up to 3 times, so to maximize value, you already have to have two generic and a green, and then up to 3 green to be able to like fully maximize it. So in decks that are, you know, even if you're playing Golgari midrange, you know, you're going to have swamps, you're going to have Mutavaults, or you're going to have Urborgs, or you're going to have lands that are not even triple green. So it's really hard to actually, like, get full value from Tranquil Frillback in general. Like, obviously not every time you're going to want to do that, but it's something to keep in mind. You know, it's hard to do. It's multi-kicker green. That's very hard to be able to do in, like, any dual color deck, especially the midrange decks that are playing a lot of Tranquil Frillback. So, and like even the Gruul Vehicles decks are playing like 2 main board copies of Tranquil Frillback, which is crazy to me. Like, I would personally play something a little faster, a little more aggressive, you know, even like a Gruul Spellbreaker or something like that. You know, that's personally what I would play over Tranquil Frillback. So the card is okay, but I think this card is overrated in the Pioneer format. So, okay, top 3. So number 3, this might be a little bit of a surprise to some people in terms of that it is on the list, but I have Gitu Lava Runner. So Gitu Lava Runner, again, like most of these cards on this list, is pretty solid of a card, but I think that in modern Pioneer, or Modern as in like current Pioneer, I think this card sees a lot more play than it should. There's a lot of really powerful red 1-drops that they've been printing in Pioneer, especially the last like, year and a half, 2 years. Gitu Lava Runner is so outdated. Like obviously you have, your Swift Spears and your Kumanos, but then there's also like Soul Scar Mage that you could play, for instance, is like a much better 1-drop. And there's a whole bunch more I can't even think of right now, but like Gitu Lava Runner is probably like the 7th one that I would play on that list. Again, the only redeeming quality is it is a wizard. So if you're playing like the Wizard Bird with Wizard's Lightning, and you want a couple extra wizards, that's fine. But generally, you mostly just play like not Monastery Whisperer, but you play Soul Scar Mage, and then you play like Vishino Pyromancer, that kind of thing. Gitu Lava Runner, it can do a thing, but I highly advise playing it in your regular red aggro decks. It's definitely not as good as it used to be, and it's a little bit overrated. All right, top 2. Number 2 is going to be a little bit of a surprise to some people, but I have Siege Rhino. So Siege Rhino, obviously, yes, Siege Rhino used to be a very, very powerful card in the format, like at the very beginning, and used to be really, really good in Modern. But here's the thing, Siege Rhino, people are still trying to make this card work. And, I'm not saying don't play the card. Don't play cards you don't like to play. But the problem is people go into all these, they go into all these Pioneer leagues and, they're trying to make Siege Rhino work. And it's one thing if you're just kind of like memeing for the day, or, like, oh, I kind of feel like playing some Siege Rhino today, and you play Siege Rhino. I perfectly understand that. But people are actively trying to make this thing work. And I've seen it played at like RCQs, in 1Ks, and other competitive events where the opponent's just playing like abs and mid-range and just getting absolutely destroyed by the deck that they're playing against, because Siege Rhino is just not built the same anymore. Like Shieldred is basically the current day Siege Rhino, where it's the 4/5 for 4 that does good things. Like if you want to play Siege Rhino, just play Shieldred. Siege Rhino is just it's not there anymore. Okay, its time has come. Maybe if like a very specific reprint, like a Wiltleaf Liege comes in the future, then maybe we could see some Siege Rhino return. But as of right now, Siege Rhino, it's super overrated in the format. It's not as good as it used to be. Obviously, if you want to play it at your local F&M, I highly commend you for doing so, but taking this thing competitively, that's just not the right direction to go. So Siege Rhino is number 2 on the list. And number 1 on the list, much to no one's surprise, you saw the thumbnail. It's Hopeful Initiate. I don't like this card. I don't like it one bit. Yes, I do understand what the card can do and what it's capable of, but if we just talk about the things that are like, what's like the most capable, I mean, we can talk about the Millennium Calendar. Like the Millennium Calendar like wins the game eventually if it gets to 1,000 counters, and so on and so forth. But I don't think Hopeful Initiate's good. It's a 1/2, and for 1. For humans, you want to be playing like 2 ones for 1, like Recruitment Officer. Recruitment Officer is much stronger than Hopeful Initiate. They also play Kythian. Kythian is much better than Hopeful Initiate. Yes, the training, whether this creature attacks with another creature with greater power, put a 1/1 counter on it. Sure, of course, if you have a Thalia or a Recruitment Officer, yeah, it can become a 2/3. Okay. 2 and a white, remove 2 1/1 counters from among creatures you control. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Yes, I understand, like, oh, there one time I blew up an artifact with it. Of course you did. Like, that's what the card does. You're playing 4 copies of this. I would hope that you can activate its activated ability once in a while. But I don't think this card's good. Like, yeah, sometimes it comes a 2/3 or even a 3/4 sometimes. But, I don't think this card is good. I don't think Hopeful Initiate is a strong card. I would rather play, I never made the list for this. I had joked about making this list of cards I'd rather play over Hopeful Initiate. But for the most part, I would play all the other 1-drop humans. So I'd rather play like Recruitment Officer. I'd rather play Soldier of the Pantheon. I'd rather play Dragon Hunter. I'd rather play Mardu Woe Reaper over Hopeful Initiate. I just don't think the card is very good. I've never been on Hopeful Initiate. Never thought the card was good. Also, as a Warlock, it's not even like a Soldier or a Knight to where you could take advantage of, like some different typings. It's a human Warlock. So it just gets the human. It doesn't even get any other additional typing or anything like that. I don't like Hopeful Initiate. I think the card is super overrated. I just don't like playing it. I don't like playing it. I would personally play other cards in the human 1-drop slot. And the other thing at the end of the day too, it's not even that budget friendly. Like it's really not. Just play Soldier of the Pantheon. The card is like 50 cents maybe, and it's a lot stronger than Hopeful Initiate. And that's why it's the number 1 overrated card in Pioneer. on my list here. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the list? What would you change? Is there a card that I didn't include that I definitely should have had on the list? Just let me know in the comment section below. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.